Oh, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This roundtable discussion is hereby convened by the Committee on Guam U.S. Military Relocation, Public Safety, and Judiciary, just so that I can provide some premise in terms of the purpose of this particular roundtable discussion. Is first of all, I just read some of the notification, part of the notification that was provided. I will lean forward to Guam Homeland Security first to contribute part of their conversation in terms of how they're proceeding with some of these activities out there, and then we'll open it up to all the other law enforcement agencies. Obviously, there are a few law enforcement agencies here that are more actively involved in many of these incidents. Looking at the nature of the discussion, and is first and foremost the law enforcement agency's framework for emergency operation plans adequate for addressing the consequences of a terrorist act versus a criminal act. LEA's planning approach that will foster efficient integration of local and federal terrorism consequence management activities. LEA's most current information regarding the planning and operational challenges faced by the communities that have dealt with terrorist events. The Department of Corrections' contingency plans to quickly and effectively respond to any emergency situations that arise and reduce risks. And that has been discussed also already. Identify the contingencies and change factors that can impact emergency response times and objectively assess situations and their potential impact to the LEA agencies and the community. If I can ask all of you from your law enforcement perspective to understand that on this end, there are ongoing discussions in terms of formulating legislation that would reinforce all of your efforts from the get-go in terms of individuals posing some threats all the way through the judicial system. So just look at it from that perspective. From my chair, I need, and the members of the legislature, we need to also hear from you in terms of your capabilities, how you're able to respond, and what some of your restrictions are, your limitations are. Because there's no sense in passing legislation that we are not able to effectively enforce. And then in conjunction with that, we want to ensure that there's continuous discussion and collaboration as it deals with situations like these, because everything that has taken place over the course of the last 2 months is, in my sense, has really tapped many of your manpower and your resources to the fullest extent possible. And I can publicly state that I have seen a lot of collaboration and a lot of working with different partners in the community, whether it be the law enforcement agencies working together with each other, bringing in our military partners who have contributed and helped out in this situation, also bringing in some of our federal partners and getting some additional assistance where it is necessary. And then also the business sector has been also very helpful in terms of being able to provide as much support as they can. But we need to understand what some of your challenges are, what some of your capabilities are, and then we can press from there. I'd like to welcome Vice Speaker Cruz. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker, for joining us this afternoon. And before we proceed, and I'd like to ask Guam Homeland Security Advisor if he can initiate the discussion here, and then we can go ahead and go around the table. But before we do that, I'd like to ask everyone to please identify themselves for the record and then speak into the mic as you present your comments. Okay? Stand back. Just for your information. Can we go around the table first and introduce ourselves?
Sure.
Hafide Adonis Mendiola, Director, Department of Youth Affairs.
Good afternoon, Senators. Carla Borja, Deputy Director, DOC.
Senators, good afternoon. Joe San Augustine, Director of Corrections.
Thank you, Mr. San Augustine.
Good afternoon, Senators. Joey San Nicolas, Fire Chief, Guam Fire Department.
Thank you, Joe.
Good afternoon, Senators. Joseph Cruz, Chief of Police, Guam Police Department.
Thank you, Chief.
Good afternoon, Senators. Johnny Lizama, Guam Homeland Security Advisor.
Thank you, General.
Good afternoon, Senators. Conservation Officer Frankie Canata, Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Good afternoon, Senator. Matt Sablan, Director of Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Sablan.
Good afternoon, Senators. Pedro A. Leon Guerrero Jr., Director of Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Leon.
Good afternoon, Senators. Vincent Perez, I'm the Assistant Chief of Customs.
For the Senators, Colonel Joe Leon Guerrero, detailed to the Mariana Regional Fusion Center as the Deputy Director.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Senators. Edward Tobis from the Judiciary.
Chief, thank you, Chief. Okay, in terms of commencing our discussion, please, if I can get General Lizama, if you can open up our conversation.
Thank you, Senator. In recent past, in the last several weeks, we've had an upswing of bomb scares. And what we've done as far as process-wise is from Guam Homeland Security, we're basically a liaison. It's your first responders that go out to actually to respond to the scene. We've seen an increase. We've used our fusion center as far as gathering intelligence to determine whether viable threats. We've worked with local authorities within in particular the Department of Education, and developing response measures for them to be able to have their own way of dealing with their bomb scares in particular. That is now transitioned to other entities within the government of Guam, as well as within the private sector. We provide training as far as being able to develop control measures and response measures. That's part of what our mission is with Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense. We're funded via federal grants for Homeland Security as well as Office of Civil Defense. And one of our main missions is that of providing that type of training. Our other half of our mission is our fusion center. And I could defer to Colonel Leongoro to give you more detail about that as far as how that works and what we do on a day-to-day basis and how it is with regards to reacting to bomb scares.
Thank you very much, General. Chief, if I can yield to Colonel Leongoro first.
Thank you, Chair Aguon, with giving us at least the opportunity to identify the fusion center concept as we proceed. And so, bottom line up front, this is a collaboration of folks from different agencies, from the Guam Police Department, Guam Fire Department, Department of Corrections, the Conservation, Department of Agriculture Conservation Office, the Customs and Quarantine, the Port Authority of Guam, the Guam Airport Police, and so, in a nutshell, we've pretty much collaborated. We've been provided the training to move forward. We're fairly new with. It's been approximately 3 years at this point in time. You've been receiving our products as the previous chair, and to date, you still receive our products with our executive weeklies. But more importantly, what we do is more so the intelligence side. We're more on the analytics. We're not an investigatory arm, although we're we're law enforcement. We're quasi-intelligence as far as vetting information. And so with information, information becomes actionable intelligence as it's vetted by the analyst. And so the folks that have been assigned to the Fusion Center do so with the training that the General has mentioned that we undertake. And so we've taken 8 weeks of intelligence, basic intelligence training to include intermediate to assist us in determining whether or not or how to evaluate the threats that's actually ongoing and or within our island. In addition to that, as with everyone that's there, we look at reaching back to our federal counterparts. And that's with USDHS. We have a representative from USDHS, with Mr. James Cruz. He's actually off island, and so we reach to him as well as with other fusion centers within the 50 states. What are the best practices? We bring that approach over to the island so we can kind of utilize that to our disposal as well. In addition to that, we also work with our federal partners at the FBI, as with the direction from Director Comey to work with the fusion centers. So at this point, or at this juncture, we're still establishing our identity moving forward. Thanks to the governor and to the lieutenant governor as far as mandating what we need to do with respect to our creating a system that we have to kind of share that information once we get it. It's helping us out move forward, and that's just the catalyst of what we need to do to share the information that's there with the Fusion Center. And so we're still developing at this point in time, and in hopes that we can proactively and collaboratively work together to kind of bridge the communication gaps that we see in the past. And when I say that, it's bridging that gaps with our federal partners as well. And so if I take a step back, at this point in time, most of the task forces on the island with the federal side is basically done with folks from GPD or other entities assigned to the federal, to the FBI, to DEA, to ATF, and so everyone is contributing. But where do you get the opportunity to have a fusion center that has the local people that's going to gain the experience at the same time, leverage the opportunities that others have in the States, and that's with our fusion center. And so we're pushing forward with the HSA as well as with Director Esteves to establish that identity for the fusion center. And so we've done that with GDOE, building that matrices to include the rubric. Again, the superintendent meeting with the chief of police as well as the fire chief requesting for that assistance. And so they turned to the fusion center, and so we put our hats, our analytical hats on, and from there established that matrices with GDOE. And to date, in my opinion, I believe that there has been that cost savings with respect to the response from the public safety agencies to the scene. But that's in a nutshell. That's where we're actually at with the fusion center.
Thank you very much, Colonel Leon-Guerrero. Chief Cruz.
Senator, if I could, as I pose the points from the Guam Police Department, I'd like to do so by just addressing each of the bullet points that you bring to light in your call to order. So the first bullet point, as I talk to that, I'd like to first clearly state that, as you indicate here, a terrorist act versus a criminal act, from the perspective of the Guam Police Department, we see them as being one and the same. A terrorist act is a criminal act. So per se, when we respond as a police department, we're responding to a criminal act that has been committed. So as we look at it from Title IX of GCA, it's a criminal act. It's considered terroristic conduct. So we respond each time to and entertain a criminal complaint. When we talk about the framework for emergency operations, I will tell you that the framework that's in place is a framework that, in my opinion, while it is somewhat strained, it's adequate. We're dealing with it at this point in time. In the numerous calls of upwards up to 100 calls, almost 100 calls, we have been able to respond to each call. We have yet to be our resources to be tapped so that we are not able to for any one precinct to handle the calls happening in their area. However, I will tell you that although the system seems to be our system in place, our contingent in place seems to be working, there may be a time in the future where we may need to take another look at that because it may be pulling from other resources within the department. So as it is right now, my neighborhood patrol divisions, districts 1 and 2, are handling all the calls, and I think that the mechanism that we have in place are adequately dealing with that. Now, I will tell you that, I won't speak for the fire chief. I'm sure he'll talk about, his response, but we respond concurrently. Whenever there's a call that comes in, the call either comes through 911 or right to the Tactical Communication Center, and they're dispatched simultaneously. So you will see police officers and firefighters responding to each and every one of these calls. Of course, since the implementation of the risk assessment matrix by DOE, some of those, it appears at this point that matrix is working for GDOE to the point that once the incident commander on the ground, whether it's low or medium, it's established by the administrator. There need not be a response by the fire department. The police department comes in and we handle the call accordingly. So it appears at this point that we are able to handle that with the amount of calls that are coming in. When we talk about the planning approach, again, Colonel Leon-Guerrero touched on most of that. We have done a lot of collaborating throughout the law enforcement community, both local and federal. The FBI has gotten involved, NCIS has gotten involved, all the other law enforcement entities, and we've put our heads together and we've kind of figured out way forward with regards to this influx of terroristic conduct complaints and bomb threats that are coming in. So we're dealing with that. There's a type of complaint, or there's a type of threat that comes in. It's called via the robocalls or what's been dubbed as swatting these days. Those are very difficult to drill down to, but nonetheless, we are conducting our investigations and we're getting smarter on how to deal with these calls as these calls are coming in. So there's a lot of collaboration across the law enforcement community, both federal and local, to be able to deal with that. And of course, we get the fire department involved in that as well. With regards to the operational challenges, I would tell you that the operational challenges we see from the Guam Police Department is that with the influx of calls that we're getting, we're now having to respond to other calls accordingly. The calls are what we call racked and stacked. Other calls will have to be delayed because we have to take care of the safety of the children when these calls come into DOE and what have you. So the impact to the public is that there's more of a response time now. There's a greater lag time in the response because we now have to send resources in a certain direction or several directions to be able to deal with these threats. So that's kind of a complaint that we're seeing out there, and that our officers are not getting out there as timely as possible. Another thing is that it kind of disrupts routine patrol operations. By that, meaning our patrol officers can't go out there and just regularly patrol the villages and provide visibility and awareness because they're tied down taking care of these calls at the different schools or these different establishments. So as such, we have to prioritize our calls, and sometimes that kind of bogs the officers down. And again, I wanted to emphasize that we are dealing with it. We're handling it at this moment, but of course, should things go one way or the other, there is the possibility that we may have to adjust our operations to be able to deal with that influx. So to that point, when we talk about what contingencies we can continue to push forward with, the implementation of DOE's RAM and taking that and pushing that to the private sector and the different government entities and agencies, in our mind, would be probably one of the biggest or one of the most effective means for the rest of the community to be able to deal with these types of threat. Because GDOE has implemented a risk assessment matrix, they now have been able to lessen the amount of school days missed, they lessen the amount of times that the kids are not in the classroom, so it appears to be working. If we were to, and we've kind of put it out to the public sector, we put it out to the media, that by implementing such kind of a matrix or a risk assessment tool of some sort would be probably one of the biggest things to help deal with and mitigate these types of threats as they come in. And I think with that and continued collaboration across the board with our federal law enforcement partners and amongst the local law enforcement partners, I think those would be the best contingencies to be able to deal with this situation that we're dealing with now.
Thank you very much, Chief Cruz. Chief?
Have a day, Senator. I'll just go ahead and echo many of the statements that the Chief of Police has mentioned. The Guam Fire Department is in full cooperation and support with all the efforts that's being put forth on this particular issue. Our role in this whole ordeal is really safety. Our primary role is safety of anybody that's involved, and then the either shelter in place or safe evacuation of whether it be students or employees. And we really come in and take a primary role when after the fact, should God forbid anything should happen. And so are we stacked and ready for that? At this point, I would say that we do have adequate resources to respond to any incident that happens on this island. And while we do prepare for the day-to-day operations based on statistics, we are ready for an uptick anywhere between 20 to 40%, and we do have in place many MOUs and so forth, MAAs with our federal counterparts and military counterparts. So we are very confident that should many of these solutions should not solve the problem, we're capable of responding if need to. That said, I think what needs to be really emphasized here is that while we do come up with this risk matrix and working with GDOE or businesses or so forth, the community at large, we need to make it clear that these are things that are being vetted by us, approved by us. And then in working directly with the business owner, facility owner, and GDOE, we've come to the agreement that it's something that we can depend on through training, and we come to an agreement with. Guam Police Department has the full authority to trump any decision that's made out there should they feel the need to. And I just want to make sure that the confidence does stay with your law enforcement agencies that are in front of you. And so to that regard, we are ready. We don't have endless resources. We could always use more, but we feel we're adequate at this point.
Thank you very much, Chief St. Nicholas. Mr. Snugson.
Senators, good afternoon. With regards to the Department of Corrections, we do have a plan for both the Aguon and the Manila main facility. We are ready for whatever situation that may arise, and that is all that I could share with you all this afternoon. We're ready.
Understood. Thank you. Ms. Bora, I take it you're going to echo that comment? Okay.
Yes, sir, of course.
Thank you. Mr. Mendiola?
I'll have to echo the comment as well. Thank you very much. DOC and DYA have very similar characteristics to operations.
Just for the information of our people out there in the community, we all understand that we're dealing with law enforcement responsibilities and the resources. And when it comes to the specific components or plans in terms of being able to react to ensuring the safety of our people and the safety of all of the inmates, for example, at Department of Corrections, I'm asking our people to understand that some of these plans, the intricacies of some of these plans, we're not able to share, or the law enforcement community is not able to share. What I, as chair, and the members of the legislature would like to receive is not only the assurance, but knowing full well that there is a plan in place that our community can feel safe, that if an incident were to occur, then there would be immediate action to be able to carry out that safety component and ensure our people that their law enforcement agencies are carrying out their responsibilities. So let me just go ahead. Thank you. Frankie or Mr. Sabla?
Yes, good afternoon. The role as far as the Department of Agriculture, we have limited resources as far as manpower and equipment. However, we currently have 7 on-patrol conservation officers. With that limited amount, we will augment and assist Fire Department and Guam Police Department. Most of our officers did undergo the training, the ICS training with Homeland Securities. They're pretty knowledgeable. But again, with the challenges, we do consider, of course, our environmental impact and natural resources as situations arise. And we will continue with limited resources and manpower we have to support the operation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sablat. Frankie? Mr. Canata?
I'll just echo what the director, Matt Sablan, said. And also, just so the law enforcement agencies that are all here know, we train a lot and we train with the other agencies. So as far as like the framework's concerned with GPD heading a lot of stuff, we pretty much have individuals that are ready to augment GPD in the event that they need our assistance and stuff. As far as like training with the marshals and as well as Department of Correction as taking their individuals out with different tracking courses and stuff like that. So we're pretty much well versed in some of the law enforcement agencies' duties, and we're ready to augment in the event there's any kind of terrorist act out in our island.
Thank you, Officer Kanata. Major Paris?
I'd also like to echo that sentiment, but I have to preface that by identifying that in this room, I'm pretty sure that we're all short on equipment, resources, supplies, manpower, training, et cetera, However, because of our collaboration with the task forces and the use of the Fusion Center, we can lend ourselves to at least assist in that matter. And also, like, if there's any way of like formulating some sort of intelligence gathering, we could probably assist in that. But like I said, I preface that with the fact that we're facing shortages in manpower training, et cetera, And then the other thing is, like, as first responders, we have outdated go kits. A lot of our Tyvek suits, they're already like dilapidated and they're cracking. A lot of things are outdated. So on top of all this, we probably may want to look at like trying to get like a fresh supply, not just for this this particular event, but like when public health issues arise and stuff like that. Thank you.
Chief?
Good afternoon, Senators. In regards to emergency operation, of course, without discussing sensitive information that may affect the judiciary safety and planning, we do have our plan in place, and of course, we just recently got staff assistant visit from the National Center State Courts early part of last year, and we are developing a few changes based on their recommendations for emergency planning as well as continuity of ops planning. In regards to integration, we also provide support, like in a few months from now we're going to be providing support to GPD in regards to the big event that's coming up. So we're pretty flexible with integration as far as collaboration with other agencies. As far as contingency is concerned, again, based on the National Center State Court's recommendation, we're upgrading our emergency response in regards to number 5 bullet on your form. That's it.
Chief Tovis, if I can just inquire in terms of how's the collaboration between the Judiciary Guam and the Fusion Center?
Oh, very good. Joe, he's actually with the Judiciary, and he communicates with me as often as he can if he has to. So the collaboration is pretty good. We have Joe up there, and we also have the response agency coordinator, the RACS, Peter Avila, when it comes to emergency conditions such as typhoon or poor condition 1 and 2.
Colonel Yongo, you want to add?
Sir, I think that the collaboration at this table is the best that we can kind of put out, and just echoing the chief's or the marshal's comments as far as my involvement with the judiciary. I do so utilizing the hat as the FBI CJIS systems officer as well, and that's with the efforts of ensuring that our law enforcement systems are actually up to play, and that it's readily available for each and every law enforcement counterpart or officer that's actually out there. And so how do we protect our interests? It's having the necessary tools that's available. And with that in mind, as far as the Mariana Law Enforcement Regional Information Network, that's just one component that would allow us to be able to share the information and continue the collaboration to bridge the gap of that, if there's any communication gaps that's actually out there. And so the tools on the automated side is basically the forefront of what or how we're going to kind of proceed forward in making sure that we're proactively prepared for any situations that may exist, whether terrorist and or even criminal. And so that's what we have. So.
I have just a couple of questions. Just in regards to the collaboration among the local law enforcement agencies, Chief, I know that you mentioned that, and you use the terminology strained but adequate, and there's been a significant number of bomb threats just in the last 2 months. Do you have the flexibility to be able to immediately reach out to your brother and sister law enforcement agencies and bring in some additional personnel to at least backfill? Because that is, and I bring this up only because possibly overstraining your personnel. I mean, we continue to come back to this table asking for additional personnel, additional resources, and we recognize that need based on the budgetary allowance. But in the same token, just with this increase in activity, obviously many of your men and women in uniform are somewhat stressed. So it's being able to understand that not only are you addressing the public safety, you're ensuring the safety of our community, but you're able to pull in additional personnel resources from other law enforcement agencies who have equivalent training, who are ready to serve in this particular capacity and can augment your people resources. So,
Absolutely, Senator. I would tell you that within the resources that we have within the Guam Police Department, as strained as they are, we work with what we have. So we have figured out a plan to be able to deal with that, both with our officers that are assigned to specialized units who are somewhat 8-to-5 workers, if you will, and those that are on call versus those that are shift workers out in the Neighborhood Patrol Division. So we figured out a plan on how to deal with that. And of course, if the need were to arise, I feel very comfortable that I can call any one of the other directors or any one of the other law enforcement agencies, because everybody's made their commitment to support this, to be able to deal with this, and that they would be willing to help out the Guam Police Department to deal with the influx of calls and the different cases that we have. So we work with it within the department. I've made the commitment to the community, and I've told everybody already that we will use whatever resources we have. We will spend whatever money we need to spend to ensure the safety of the public. That, of course, we are not willing to compromise. So we bring on board who we need to bring on board. We activate who we need to activate, and we spend the money we need to spend so long as we are able to keep the public safe. If I need to go outside of the department, I'm very confident that everybody at this table is nothing but a phone call away to be able to tap onto their resources to be able to assist the Guam Police Department in dealing with this matter at hand. Okay.
thank you, Chief. A following question with regards to the risk assessment matrix. General, I know that Guam Homeland Security is reaching out to the private sector partners, to Department of Education. You initiated your activities with Department of Education and now with some of the other public agencies. Now, how far is your reach? And the reason I ask this in terms of training and providing the risk assessment matrix presentation to the different businesses, because there are a lot of small businesses out there that could benefit as a result of the presentation. So how far is your reach, and what are your plans in terms of being able to disseminate this information to as many of our business partners as possible?
That's a very good question, Senator. And actually, we have a good number of cadre that are available to provide the training and also to be able to help formulate RAMs for different entities. In recent past, we've done this with GHRA. We've done presentations, and we've also done training for them up until this point, and we're still offering training to them as an association. We've also offered training to other private entities. So our door's wide open. It's just a matter of scheduling the training and being able to offer it. We have a venue to be able to do that, and if not our venue, then we go out to their venue and do the training as well. We do work with their safety officers or their training officers to be able to get this done, and also, send that message to our availability and what training is available for them to be able to have from Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense.
Now, would you consider your RAM training something that could be presented, let's say, in a televised forum like this, so that it can have the maximum reach to even the small business person?
We could, Senator, but the RAMs are developed specifically for whatever entity that we're providing training to.
So they cater to.
So, for example, a RAM for GDOE does not work for Harvest, does not work for St. John's, just like with the hotels. What may work for the Hyatt may not work for the Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
So there's specific training that we do for that particular entity, so that way they can cater. And that's why it's sensitive in nature as far as not giving the actual details, but giving them a good template that they could be able to work by. To try and televise some details we can, but when it gets to the nitty-gritty as far as being able to make it specialized for that particular entity, I would recommend that they see us or we see them, and we help them hone that in.
Okay. So, Vice Speaker, any questions? Okay, just in terms of expounding on what the chief had mentioned a little earlier as it applies to swatting, just for the information of the public, and I know all of you are probably familiar with the use of the term swatting, but I'm going to just provide a definition and let all of our law enforcement partners here know that the legislature is in the process of formulating legislation, and if by any chance you have any input from our local perspective, because the proposed template is being utilized or is being acquired from another jurisdiction in the mainland U.S. So obviously some of these laws need to be adjusted so that in fact they're site sensitive here in Guam. But swatting, just for the information of the public, is a goal achieved by hacking where the hacker tricks 911 systems into deploying SWAT, S-W-A-T, to an unsuspecting victim's home under false pretenses. A new cyber crime called swatting is capable of putting people in danger with SWAT in their own homes by strangers thousands of miles away. Swatting is an internet prank crime where someone finds your address either through your IP or because your name and location is known. Then they call 911 anonymously and report a fake emergency. Example, someone can call and say that someone at that address is being held at gunpoint, or someone is going to commit suicide, or a SWAT team would be dispatched to that address. So that's the definition of swatting, and your legislature is in the process of formulating legislation. So folks, if by any chance you have any input that you can provide, especially either prior to the introduction or subsequent to the introduction, so that we can ensure that whatever legislation is enacted into law, that it's enforceable. Yes, Chief Cruz.
Senator, I would tell you that in a discussion that we've had with the U.S. Attorney's Office, in speaking to the Assistant U.S. Attorney, we understand that there are federal laws that are in place right now to deal with swatting, which is great. But we know, as you had just mentioned, that there is no local statute. There are jurisdictions that exist stateside that have implemented laws and statutes specifically to that. And I will tell you that from the perspective of the Guam Police Department, we believe that local legislation to be able to deal with swatting is definitely going to help our island. It's going to help the local law enforcement entity as well as the Attorney General's office in being able to deal with this. Now, while the phenomenon of swatting is relatively new to the island, and many of the local law enforcement entities are still trying to understand the true phenomenon so that we can investigate it to its fullest and be able to apprehend the individuals responsible for these crimes. Having the legislation in place so that that crime can be charged locally would definitely add to being able to deal with this particular crime. So from the perspective of the Guam Police Department, we're definitely in support of the legislation that's being introduced at this time.
Thank you very much, Chief Cruz, for that endorsement prior to the introduction of the proposal. No, but I think I hear you very loud and clear, Chief. And first and foremost is the safety of our community, making sure that our local laws are enforceable and that the Attorney General can be able to prosecute anyone to the greatest extent of the law. If in fact there are some terrorists or some other threats out there in the community. So I certainly appreciate that. The takeaway, folks, unless there are any final comments from our law enforcement agencies? Yes, General?
Just one, Senator, and we talked just briefly about it, but as far as resourcing, as far as for all in law enforcement, we do have partners from the federal side that do respond when we ask them. So they are available on island. We've used them on a number of occasions. So just wanted to make that known that they're available and they are true partners with us as well.
Thank you, General Lizama, and I'm really glad that that came from you or someone from the panel, because I've seen some of these activities take place and I've been informed about the collaboration and the cooperation. Yes, Chief?
In addition to our federal law enforcement partners, Senator, I think it's noteworthy to mention that our military partners as well have come to the table and have helped us out. Many of the K-9 assets that are being used to deal with these threats when they're cleared and sweep come from the U.S. Air Force. So our military partners are helping out in this cause as well, and I think it is noteworthy to mention that they are helping us out.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. And it's inclusive of or reflective of the one community approach, where you have our local law enforcement agencies all working together, collaborating and reinforcing and providing support as much as possible within limitations. You have our military partners, you have our federal partners, whether it's the U.S. Attorney General's Office or the FBI, and then we also have our private sector partners who are also stepping forward and providing some direct assistance. So I think that we all recognize and we all have one goal in common, and that is public safety, ensuring the safety of our island and our community. I want to, if there's no further comments, close by saying this, folks, in the last month and a half, we've seen a lot of these bomb threats take place. And it stressed a number of our law enforcement agencies, and specifically the Guam Police Department, the Guam Fire Department, and the Guam Homeland Security. And we've seen a lot of collaboration, and many of your law enforcement officers have shared perspectives in terms of not only being slightly stressed, but doing it for the purpose of ensuring the safety of our community. And on that note, I just want to extend thank you for continuing to ensure the safety of our community and our people and doing what you do. The takeaway here is, like I said, in terms of the RAM, making sure that our people understand that there are some training mechanisms out there, training information, processes that can be shared with the private sector as well as with our public safety agencies. The other takeaway is, and I'll just quote Chief Cruz, you mentioned that your agency is trained, and we recognize that. That's why I wanted to emphasize the collaboration and reinforcing support from other law enforcement agencies. But you said that you're adequate at this point in time, and likewise with the Guam Fire Department. But we want to ensure that the way forward reflects in continuing to focus on the safety of our law enforcement community. So please, if you have any additional suggestions in addition to the possible legislation on swatting, then I would welcome it, the committee will welcome it, and especially as we proceed with our budgetary discussions. So thank you very much again, folks. I appreciate the discussion today. Have a good day. Thank you.